Happy Thursday, everyone. So, for today, we are very excited to be here with you all. And of course, with Kike, who has been with us and who has been really amazing with sharing his knowledge for us to get our dream jobs and create impact and value to the world. Thank you very much for opening your camera, Talia. Hi. So, this masterclass is actually number 8 out of 22 made exclusively for Study New South Wales. So this session is also recorded and will be uploaded on YouTube for everyone's reference in the future. So yeah. Welcome to the masterclass. So to participate in Zoom in this session, please do mute your mics, and yeah, you can start your videos. That would be great. We can get to know each other, see each other. And if you have any comments or questions, you can open your mic or you can type it in so I can read it out loud for Kika to hear. And yeah. So as you know, Kike is actually the senior manager of Google right now. And I actually want to hear the whole story. I've read a lot of, like Paula mentioned a few times about you, and it would be so great to meet you in person soon, I hope.
Likewise.
So yeah, Kike, do you want to take over?
Awesome, let's start. Let's go to the next one.
Oh yeah, please remember to connect with us, by the way, and also with Kike. That would be amazing over on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Great. Over to you.
Great. Thank you. All right, so thanks everyone for joining, and apologies for moving it from last Tuesday. Unfortunately, I was sitting on a plane to Germany, and I'm joining from snowy Germany at 8 a.m. in the morning. So thanks for entertaining the time change. As a bit of a recap from last week, so for those of you who were able to join, you'd remember that we did the session on interviewing. So some of the tips that we shared, and this is not even close to what we did last week, because we did a really fun interview where Paula interviewed me. She was the head of sales of a really cool company called Velocopter, and she interviewed me, and I was applying for my first job. But yeah, some of the tips that we went through: be early, make sure you research the company, make sure you know your resume, prepare some answers and questions for after the interview, highlight your strengths, be polite, be confident, and don't bluff, be honest, especially when something's out of your scope, and really, really important, answer the question. I mentioned that both Paula and I have interviewed people where they never get to the question, to answer the question, which is really disappointing. So make sure you're answering the question. And actually, the last person that I interviewed is here in the call today. He joined Google a week ago. So Louis, if you want to say hi.
Hey guys, how's it going?
So congrats on getting the job at Google.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It was a tough interview, very tough.
No, it wasn't. But let's continue then, Louis. Great. So let's jump into the topic for today. Go to the next one. So today we're going to be discussing what affects negotiation. Who's managing the slides? Sorry, who is Chiara? Are you managing the slides, or is that you, Angel?
It's Angel.
Okay, cool. All right, Angel. I will call you out when we need to go to the next one then. Thank you. So first, let's get into the right mindset. So when we're sorry, let's go to the next one. When we're in a negotiation, just have a think of when do you negotiate in your daily life, and who do you negotiate with? If you think about it, negotiations happen all the time. It's not just for business or when you're buying or selling things. It actually happens constantly in relationships with your parents, with your spouse, with your girlfriend, with your boyfriend, with your children. I've learned a lot trying to negotiate with a 2-year-old trying to put on his shoes late in the evening. So you can really learn negotiation skills from everywhere, and you're constantly negotiating, even if you don't realize you are. But I think often we don't really negotiate when in situations where we could. So my wife is German, and she gets very embarrassed because I genuinely do this everywhere. If I go out to a shop, like even if it's a Myers or like a large retailer, I will always try to negotiate the price down. And I tell you that like 6 out of 10 times, you probably like people have, even store managers or clerks, they have room to negotiate prices. And you'd be surprised the situations where you're able to negotiate. Obviously, don't try that when you're putting out petrol or like in situations where it's really obvious that you can't. But genuinely, there's so many opportunities to negotiate, but we often don't. And I think culturally in Australia is perhaps not as common as in countries in Southeast Asia or in South America, where a lot of you guys are from, and where I'm from. But yeah, negotiation is a skill that will help you for the rest of your life. And this is just a small take on what I think framework rather of negotiation should look like. So if we go to the next one, there's a really interesting quote by Robert Fisher that says, the ability to see the situation as the other side sees it, as difficult as it may be, is one of the most important skills a negotiator can possess. And this is really true. When you're negotiating, the most important thing, or there's a couple of important things, but putting yourself in the shoes of the person in front of you, that's when you'll truly flourish at negotiating things. And that could be, and it's really putting yourself in the shoes of the person in front of you. Sometimes the business that you're negotiating with will have certain goals, but what are the goals of the person that's there? Is it recognition within their business, or are they genuinely just interested in the best for their business? Like, it's really truly putting yourself in the shoes of the person in front of you. And if we go to the next one, there are different negotiations. So different types of negotiations require different types of mindsets. So there's two things that we need to consider when we're negotiating. One is conflict, and the other one is the importance of the relationship. So obviously, anything can vary from low importance to high importance in terms of relationship, or in low to high conflict in the negotiation. And each type of these negotiations, they require different types of tactics or techniques in order to be successful. So for example, if you're in a high conflict, low importance. So think about it, high conflict, low importance. So I don't care what's really going to happen, but there's really a pushback of back and forth, or rather there's like, we're both trying to get to very different outcomes. So that could be as simple as a transaction. Like, I'm trying to buy something from you. I'm trying to get the lowest possible price, and the seller is trying to get the highest possible price. So that's a big conflict because we have very opposing thoughts. And we're coming in with very opposing goals. But the truth is that if the seller owns the store, I'm just another customer. So potentially it's not very important that he wins that negotiation, or even for me, because I might have other options, right? So in those cases, you can just call out the competition or try to solve the problems, or even compromise on the price. Those are some of the techniques that you may use. But for example, if you're in a relationship with your partner, that may be a low conflict but high stakes, or or high importance relationship. So obviously you don't want to break up the relationship, and also you're in a situation where potentially you're not coming with clashing thoughts or goals. So in those type of negotiations, the best techniques that you can use are accommodate to the other party's requests, since it's low conflict, and it's high importance, you're also willing to make those accommodations. Problem solve, try to find ways out of the different approaches that you have for that negotiation, or even compromise, and decide, okay, well, I'll let you have this one, right? So very, very different types of negotiation require different types of tactics. But if we go to the next one, the core of any negotiation, it always remains the same. Okay, so you may have very different types, but the core is the same. So you always have to focus on the interests instead of position. So try to solve the problem as it is your problem. You always have to set a walkaway price. So one are those situations that you're just gonna walk away, and like you really have to know your worth for this. You have to set expectations early as well. So you have to set an anchor. So the anchor is when you come in early and you state the price, or you state the stakes, and that's gonna help you really get to a point where you can't move too far from it. So let's say if you're an entrepreneur and um, you're selling a service. Let's say you're creating music for videos, and you come in and you say the music for my videos is so for one video I'm going to charge $500. Then you set the expectation right away that you're willing to negotiate within that range. So the supplier or the buyer will not come in and say, oh, I'll give you $50. Maybe that's what they thought in the beginning, but when you say 500, then that puts them at 500. And the same, maybe they thought, oh, this is going to cost me $2,000. So if you come in and you say 500, that's probably not the best if you're willing, if they were willing to pay so much more. But that's why it's important that you know what you're worth when you're coming to a negotiation. You always have to invent options. More options equal better or more gain for both parties. So you have to be creative, and you separate the people problem. So Fisher, the same guy as before, used to say, be soft on people, hard on issues. So you don't have to be rude or aggressive. It's all about, you have to be very clear what the problem is and what the issue is. You always have to have a bit of rapport with the person you're negotiating. A smile and a good relationship will always get you further than an aggressive negotiation. At least in my experience, it does. So these are just some things that the core of some negotiation. But if we go to the next one, we'll touch base in more detail in all of these at a later stage. But I think the most important thing in a negotiation will always be the same thing, and that's information. So whichever party has more information, whoever's done the most research about the other party and knows the most, that's who's going to win the negotiation ultimately. And really remember that it's so important your research, the information that you have, even if it's anecdotally, that's what's really going to get you ahead in any negotiation. So let's play the video on the next one, just so we can see a little bit of an example of what a day-to-day negotiation may look like. Can we get some audio on that? Angel, can we get some audio?
Hold on, we're having a bit of technical difficulties.
If not, I will press.
Okay,
I can't share my screen. I was gonna do it.
it's okay. Here we go. I have it.
I'm just saying, telling the truth is not in the cards right now. I thought you'd be excited to have an acting job.
If it's an acting job, we should get paid.
Yeah, you're gonna get paid in experience.
I want to actually get paid.
All right, what do you want?
$600 for the day, plus overtime if we go over 8 hours. I'll do my own hair and makeup, And I want you to pay for the 6-week intensive acting camp that my mom can't afford.
$50 for the day and a 2-week acting class at the YMCA nearest you.
$500 and a 4-week acting class.
$300 and a 3-week class.
Done.
I would have done it for $500.
I would have done it for the experience.
All right. So
I'm just saying, telling the truth.
let's stop that. So can you guys recognize that type of negotiation, what it was? So I know I'm a bit short on time today because this is actually like I have quite a lot of content because I really want to get to the framework. So I'm just gonna call it out. But this was a perfect example of balanced concerns. So it's usually balanced concerns when you have high conflict but high importance. So clearly they both wanted very different things. They came with very different mindsets of what the goal was of the negotiation. But it was also a very high importance negotiation. So she needed him to get what she wanted. He needed her to get what he wanted. And it seems that there weren't a lot of options outside of that. So a business partnership is a good example of this balanced concerns type of negotiation where you're high conflict, high importance. And the best strategies for this is problem solving or compromise, as we saw before. So problem solving, like you clearly saw as they're negotiating, they're discussing, they're trying to find ways around what they need. If it's not the money, what else can it be? And the experience and all that, and also the compromise. You see how they both went down on what they originally came in with. So they both compromised a little bit, and they finally came to an agreement. And based on what we said before about the most important thing being preparation and information, imagine how this negotiation would have been different if either one of the parties, so they both stated what they were willing to go for, right? Like in the end, he ended up paying $300 plus the 2 weeks of lessons or whatever it was. And she's gonna do what he needs. But imagine he had come in knowing that she would have done it for the experience, which she did before. Or imagine she would have come in knowing that he would have paid $500. So imagine how the results of this negotiation would have changed. So if either party would have actually done more research and known what the other party was willing to give, the negotiation would be completely one-sided. Either if she knew that he was willing to pay $500, she would have started with 1,000 and got him down to 500 instead of getting 300 plus some lessons that she wanted. And same, right? Like for him, if he knew that she would have done it for the experience, why would he had bothered to pay anything? So information, very, very important. Obviously, this is a silly example, but this truly is reflecting of any negotiation that you will have with anyone, either business or in personal life. So let's go through some negotiation concepts. So the first one, so I'm just gonna read some. Sorry, Angel, can we go to the next slide? Yeah, so goal setting. And I'm just gonna read this, but I'll explain them a little bit better afterwards, and I'll be using them as we move along. So goal setting, this is what it is. You set the goal before the negotiation. What this does is this allows you to identify favorable possible outcomes. So if you know what you want, then you know what you're after. And it really helps you, identify those outcomes that you want. And you'd be surprised how many people go into a negotiation without knowing really what it is they want to get out of it. So really important to know that. Then your BATNA is your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So BATNA is basically, if it's, let's say I want to sell you this for $10, you want to buy it for $5. We won't agree to something. So what is it outside of the price? Sorry, I don't know where this noise is coming from. So what is it that it's not price that will get you to buy, like to sell this to me, right? So what's the best next option or the best alternative to the agreement? The reservation price is basically the maximum price that the seller, that the buyer is willing to pay, and the minimum price that the seller is willing to take for something. And by price, I'm just saying price, but it could be value, it could be services, it could be anything. Walk away price is when you get to this point, you have to know it's when I'm just not, like, this is not going to work out. Thank you for your time. Goodbye. Your zone of possible agreement is that, like, perfect place in the middle where you want to buy something for 10. I want to sell it for 10. You start at 15. I start at 5. We get to 10. That's the zone of possible agreement, when we actually agree that this deal is happening. And finally, the anchor, we touched on it before. It's just setting an aggressive yet realistic starting point to a negotiation. So the starting point, what you do by setting the starting point is that you don't allow the negotiation to go too far from this anchor, and hence the name. So what does this look like visually? I think visually is just so much easier to explain. Sorry, Angel, can we? Thanks. So we have here your seller's acceptable range and your buyer's acceptable range, and right in the middle is that zone of possible agreement. So actually, let's go to the next slide. So that's just the concept. But if we put this in a real situation, let's say I'm selling a car, right? So if I'm the seller, the minimum price I'm willing to take for my car is $15,000. And then comes a buyer that their budget is from 10 to 16,000. So if we're negotiating and I start with 21 and he starts with 10, if we manage to get to a point between 15 and 16, sorry, that's your zone of possible agreement. So that's when the deal will very easily happen. But there's also your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So in this case is when you don't get to that reservation price for either the buyer or the seller, it's what are those things that I could offer, they could offer me to get to that agreement. So maybe if I was buying the car, they would offer me a free roof rack and a towing bar. And then I'd be like, oh, okay, so it's more expensive than what I wanted to buy, but I actually needed to buy this anyway. Or if you're selling service, potentially this, like, you don't get to an agreement on price, but what if you tell the company that you're working with or the buyer, okay, I will do this service for you for $500, or in this case, let's say for $13,000. But you need to recommend me to 3 of your partners, and you need to put my logo on your website. So that's how you can get to agreements without actually being within that zone of possible agreement. You can be outside the reservation price or that reservation point, but you can still get to an acceptable agreement. So next, I'm just gonna well, any questions so far? Actually, I think it's pretty straightforward, but please let me know if you have any questions, because we're gonna jump straight into the framework now. All right, that's 7 seconds, no questions. So for the framework, I'm actually gonna share this framework with you at the end. So feel free to take notes or not, whatever you want, but there will be a link sorry, to an editable format of this framework that you can use. It's just a 1-pager, but you can use this in the future if you're coming into a negotiation and you need a little bit of support. So let's go to the next one. So to start, the first part of the framework, and I'm just going to go through the framework again. I'm not going to make it pretty or anything. I'm just going to tell you what it is. So first, you need to prepare. Sorry. So for the preparation, you need to find out as much as you can from the person or the company or the party that you're negotiating with. As we discussed before, and as we saw on the video example, it's all about who has more information. So make sure you do your homework and you know as much as you can. And you can use this framework to as a guide of what it is that you need to think of. And in that information gathering stage, you also need to know what's the best alternative option to a negotiated agreement. So what's your BATNA? So what is it that the company or the person that you're negotiating with could offer you aside from, let's say, money or price that they're willing to pay? What is it that they have that you want that's outside of the general price agreement? The second part of the framework is to really know your worth. Sorry, Angel, can we go to the second one? So second part of the framework is to know your worth. So what are the strategic value adds from your business and from the customer as well that they're bringing to the table? Sorry. And this is really, really important because you need to go into negotiation really knowing what you're offering, and not just what's the main service, but what are those alternatives or those extra things that you bring to the table that they might have not considered. But also, what are those things that they have, like we said before, that you may want? The third part of the framework is when you think of the trading items. So third part, thank you. So third part of the framework, trading items. So you have your storytelling items. Sorry, something's happening with my throat since I got to Germany. There we go. So third part is training items. So this is where you list out the items that are easy to give. And think about this. This is really, really important because this is what's going to give you a bit of edge when you're negotiating. What are the storytelling items? So what are the things that are important for your customer, but they're very easy for you to give as a business? There's actually an interesting, I don't know if you guys have heard the term red herring, but a red herring is when, let's say you're buying something and there's an item that's put on the table that is made sound like as if it was something really, really important, like really, really hard to concede. But in reality, it's really, really easy for the other party to concede on that. So for example, if I'm buying the car, like I said before, a red herring might be throwing that roof rack, right? The seller the car salesman might be saying like, oh my God, I can't throw this roof rack. Like I'm really gonna get fired, but I'm gonna do it if you take the car today. But seriously, like this is the biggest deal of the month. Like it's so important for me to close this deal. So I'm gonna throw this roof rack, but please don't tell anyone, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, this roof rack was probably something that was so easy for them to add and to throw into the deal. And that's what a red herring is. So always be careful for those things. And again, if you've made your preparation, if you've done your research, you could hopefully identify those. But the truth is that they are very hard to identify. That doesn't mean that you can't have your own as well. There's the contentious items, which are important for both parties. And then the trade-off items. So what are the things that are important to you, but they're easy for the customer to give? So knowing this, very important when you go into negotiation. The fourth part of the negotiation, and I'm gonna touch a little bit more on this fourth part because I think it's really important. Personally, I use it a lot at work. If you guys were there, no, actually we haven't touched base on this course, but all right. So fourth part, no extra blah blah. It's just give options. So giving options will 100%, or rather not 100% of the time, but in most cases will give you a better outcome to a negotiation. So if we go to the next one, multiple equivalent simultaneous offers is what it's called, the MESO. And this is a technique for negotiation that was developed by the Harvard Business School many years ago, but it's widely used now. And it's crazy that nobody really, or it's potentially something that we'll think about it and we nod our heads. It's like, oh yeah, this makes sense. But it was up to them to put it in the paper and make it pretty and like get people to actually start doing it like purposely. But the idea behind the multiple equivalent simultaneous offers is presenting more than one offer at a time to increase the other side's satisfaction, as well as the odds of an agreement, that the agreement will be implemented. So what does this look like? Let's skip the next one and go to the next one. So this is an example I literally just put together just for fun. So if, let's say if I'm in Germany right now, I'm going to be 2 months in Germany, and I left my car in Sydney and I left it at a friend's house. Or rather, I leave my car in Sydney and I have nowhere to leave it, so I'm just going to lease my car, right? So what I do is I go to my friends and I put together 3 packages to lease my car: the gold, silver, and bronze packages. I like to name them as in and color code them and stuff, so like to make it very, very clear what are the best, the mid, and the lower options. And there's also something psychological about not going for the worst one, but also not going for the best one, and just kind of finding something that accommodates you. So in this case, I'm going for 2 months. I want to charge, let's say, I'll just describe the gold lot, right? $2,000 monthly rent with unlimited insurance cover, 0 excess, unlimited distance that they can drive with my car all over Australia, and I will throw in a GPS, baby seats, and a full tank of gas. In the Silver Surfer, similar situation, it's half the rent, so it's only $1,000, but they can only drive up to 20,000 Ks. Sorry, they can only drive up to 10,000 kilometers, only in New South Wales and metro and regional New South Wales, and the insurance will only cover $20,000 in damages. And I will throw in the GPS, but if they want a baby seat and a full tank, they need to pay for that. And then, as you can see there, the BC Bronze is just a scaled down version of that, where they can only drive 3,000 kilometers a month and only New South Wales. So why did I do this? So let's go to slide, the one previous to this. So what are the advantages of making multiple equivalent simultaneous offers? So first, I'm gathering information, right? So I want to know what's important for my friend. What do they care about? Do they care about the insurance? Do they care about the excess, about the GPS, the baby seat, the full tank, maybe about the actual price of the rent, or the insurance? This will help me create an opportunity for a discussion to find out more information about the other party. It also signals flexibility. So the fact that I am offering multiple options also shows that I'm willing to work out a final option that's not within the 3 that I presented. And that's a good sign if you have more information than the other party, which is what this type of negotiation strategy will help you. It will help you do. The other thing is it ensures that you get something for each concession. So what this means is that if I go down in rent, then I need to make sure that I'm getting something out of that. So then I'm not going to throw in insurance and GPS and baby seats and a full tank of gas if I just cut my monthly rent for my car from 2,000 to 1,000, right? So what this means is that each concession that I make, it's very clear from the options that I need to remove something else from the equation, or that I can't just concede and let you have everything. You can't have the best of everything, right? And that makes it very, very clear to the other party that if they want to remove something, like in this case, as you have it now on the screen, If you want to decrease the rent from 2,000 to 100, then okay, but you don't get the unlimited insurance. You only covers it will only cover you for 20,000 damages, and you have to pay $500 excess, and you only drive in New South Wales, metro and regional, and the other stuff, right? So they're not going to ask you for a discount, or if they do, rather, they're not going to ask you to concede on everything. And they might, but the truth is that having this option will help you have that discussion and get to a better position. So the fifth part and the last part of the framework is the close. So once you've presented your options, I'm gonna tell you, like, truthfully, it's very, very rare when somebody just picks one of the three options or one of the two or whatever the number of options you presented. I would suggest don't do more than three options, because 4 or more will distract from the main purpose. I would say keep it to 2 or 3 options. And don't expect a final decision on the meeting. The truth is that you might have to come back and work out a better mix of the options that you've presented. So when you're ready to close, what are some of the signals that you should be looking for? So you're looking for somebody that's delivering on every promise. So they say, we're meeting at this time, they meet, they come to the meeting. They say, I'll check with my business on this, they come back to you on the email. You want partners or customers that, or like parties that you're negotiating with, to initiate communication that shows like proactive interest on what you have to offer, or in the negotiation that you're in, is actually a really good sign for a close. They're physically involved. That's really hard now with COVID, but you can see that people that are like literally like not just moving from A to B to make things happen, so coming to your office or meeting you somewhere, but they're also like, in their body language, you can tell they act as your champion inside the company. So they really promote what you have. They use your language. They speak in first person. So I want this. I think that this, blah, blah, blah. When they go to we, that's kind of psychologically what they're trying to do, is to remove the blame or the pressure of them being the ones making the negative decision. So yeah, talking to you in first person is a really good sign. Specific availability, time, implementation questions. So yeah, if they're asking you what, like how, after I've plugged it in, how do I make sure that it's connected to, like literally very pinpointed specific questions, that's a really good sign that they're already vested in, and that they're ready to close. And yeah, when they want things repeated or reiterated, it just shows that they're really, really interested. So let's go back then to to the car situation. So obviously we remember that. So after the close, what did we end up with? So after I saw my friend and we did that closing session, this is what we might end up with, something like this. So they ended up paying rent of $1,200 a month. So in between the gold and the bronze, insurance was really important for them, so they get the unlimited. But because I had to drop the rent so much, they actually get an excess and a lower kilometers of driving around, and only New South Wales and Canberra. And I'm not throwing GPS, baby seat, and full tank. So as you can see, when you mix the options and you close, in the closure is when that final negotiation happens, where you put together a package of what you offered, and you try to find those concessions and those storytelling items and concessional items and that sort of thing, and really get to the final option or the final close. So what are those some of these closing techniques? So I'd say there's 3 that I personally like a lot. So asking for a decision, really puts the person or yeah, I guess the person that you're negotiating with on the spot, looking for roadblocks and sealing the deal. So asking for a decision is basically very direct. So do you agree to do this? Yes or no. A trial close and indirect close, if we can meet all the requirements, are you able to do this today? Yes or no. And objection reversal. So if they've said, oh, I don't think so because of this issue, well, if we can solve X issue, are you able to agree on it today? As you can see, we had yes or no and a timeline, like, is it today? Looking for roadblocks is the other one. So ask the other party to diagnose the issues. So what would prevent this from going ahead? So that's not a yes or no, but it's rather, okay, so for this to go ahead, then I would need the car driven to my house by Tuesday and with a full tank of gas. Done. I can do that by Tuesday. Do we have a deal? And then finally, sealing the deal is once you've reached to that agreement, you finish the call or the email, whatever it is, with a letter of intent. And this is really important because often what happens is that you get to sort of an agreement, but then you don't send that letter of intent, or you don't get to the letter of intent. And the letter of intent can be anything from an email, a letter, sorry, a contract, a phone call, and on the next one, some examples. So letter of intent could be restating the agreement, and then like, well, sorry, three parts. Sorry, can we go to the next slide? So three parts to a letter of intent. So the first one is restating the agreement. So we've agreed that I will drive the car to you on Tuesday with a full tank. You'll pay me $1,200 a month, and you will get unlimited driving between New South Wales and Canberra, and up to an unlimited insurance with a $500 excess. Boom, that's the agreement. Then an easy call to action. So to finalize this agreement, please sign here, or here's a PO, here's a contract, or click here to open an account, whatever this looks for you and your company. But you have to have that call to action to close things and like kind of tie the knots and or put the cherry on top. And then finally, the time frame. You need to set by when, because it can happen that it doesn't happen right away, or that they try to push it out, or they're kind of thinking about it. I'm sure you've heard of cooling off periods when you've bought something very expensive like a house. That cooling off period is because it's like literally by law after an auction. In most countries will have cooling off periods because people just get hot-headed in the auction and they start throwing numbers and whatnot, and then they're like, oh shit, can I actually buy this or not? Or they look at their finances and they realize that something's happened. So what you want, and this is going to sound really bad, but you want the decision to be made as soon as possible. The longer the time passes, the less momentum you have and the less likely you're going to win this negotiation. So definitely set that time frame. If you're getting close to the time frame, then follow up. And yeah, just to wrap up for today then, what are the 10 components of a strong deal? And I'm sure you'll get this deck afterwards, but number one is prepare and investigate. I think we touched enough times today on the point that information is the most important thing that you have in a negotiation, on either side of the negotiation that you're sitting on. You need to know your worth. Right? What are those things that you bring to the table? How much are they worth? The anchor, you need to set an aggressive yet a realistic goal. So you don't want to come in and say my services are worth $1 million if really they're worth 200,000 or 5,000. So you have to be realistic. That's why you need to know your worth. But you have to come in and try to set that expectation early on, especially if you're starting up or if you're an entrepreneur or something like that. The best alternatives. to the negotiated agreement. So if it's not the money, what else can they offer you that would get you to an agreement? Or what else can you offer them that will get them to an agreement? Establishing your reservation price. So what's that point where you're either discussing BATNA or you're walking away, right? And presenting options and trying to anticipate the counter offer. So that's part of the preparation. So once you have the options, try to think what do you think they're going to want, and then think maybe before you come in and present options to have some options kind of saved for yourself of what certain concessions could mean in your whole package. And finally, always close with next steps. So always restate the agreement if you already got it, and set that call to action and send that letter of intent. If not, then make sure you have next steps with a deadline. Deadline is super important if you don't want to lose that momentum from the negotiation that just happened. And that's it for today. So what I want to leave you guys with is, if you go to this link, or if you receive the deck, you can click through. This is the framework. It's an editable format, or Google Doc. Feel free to download it and use it if you go into a negotiation. And yeah, let me know what you think, or let the Academy of Entrepreneurs rather know what you think, and they'll either they'll come to me or they'll get back to your questions as soon as possible. So yeah, thank you guys very much for your time. That was it for today.
Any questions from you guys? You can unmute your mics or you can type it in. I have a question though, Kiki.
Sure.
How long should you wait before you do a follow-up? Like
You should do it immediately.
Like a day after?
I think you should, like, I like to do them right away. And I think that's the best way to do it. If there's less chance that if you do it right away that you'll forget things that were discussed, or things that part of the conversation, or it'll be just more present in everyone's mind. So let's say if you and I are in the middle of a negotiation and I wait till tomorrow to send my meeting notes or my call to action, or like the agreement that we got to, that gives the opportunity for you to say like, I don't remember agreeing to that, or I don't remember this part of the conversation. But if I send it right away after we just discussed, it's very unlikely that you'll be able to say like, that didn't happen. Well, it just happened 5 minutes ago. Like, so very, very unlikely that you'll be able to refute that. So I like sending meeting notes and that letter of intent, or even going through what we've discussed immediately after a negotiation.
That's interesting because here, like, I'm in the Philippines, right? So in an office setup, usually you do follow-ups like a week after. And yeah, you're right, people forget. So what they do is they send you a screenshot like, this is our conversation, etc., etc. So yeah, a different point of view, like, because sometimes like Filipinos get they get shy and they think that they're being bothersome when they do follow-ups and negotiating things. So I think it's also a culture thing.
I think it's all how you frame it. I don't think it's a cultural thing. If you send, like, let's say if it's a softer culture where you might seem aggressive if you're following up right away, then maybe don't follow up, but just frame it in a different way. Just say, hi, just following up from the conversation we just had. Just wanted to make sure that we both have the same information for next week when we meet again. These are where the main topics we discussed, and these were the action items. And it's just good for both, you know. Sorry, you're helping them. What's that?
Continue. Sorry.
No, that's it.
Yeah, Talia's raising her hand. Yes, you can unmute yourself.
I just had a question in regards to, let's just say you've followed those steps and you feel like something's gone cold, because I'm a lot like you. I like to take notes as I'm a writer. So I like to take notes as we
Right.
have the meeting. And then I send out an email straight after I've left the premises or we've had a meeting. And I give them a similar example of a letter of intent. So I'll just briefly outline with bullet points of what we've discussed to get them to confirm
Amazing.
and then agree to what we've discussed, so they can't go back on what they've said in the meeting, whether that's with one person or two. Now, let's say we've done that. We've also left them to follow up. So I normally like to leave at least 48 hours for them to either respond via phone or email. If they haven't responded within that time, I'll give them a quick nudge as a follow-up. Hi, just thought I'd, make contact and see how your thoughts or feedbacks are following through on what we transcribed. Let's just say we've done all of that. It's now a week. They said that they're going to come back. I do understand it will be a cold lead. However, what if it's a new brand of market that you're bridging into and nobody's heard of it? Is that more of a skepticism kind of, or is that like, I'm not interested?
I think that's very valid points. Obviously, as Google, I've always had that door already open from the start for being such a large company, but entrepreneur. So I don't know if you've been to the previous ones, but I've owned 4 companies in the past. And when I had my first company, I went and talked to potential customers and partners, and it was very hard to get them to follow up. And that's why I think that letter of intent is so important, that it has, first of all, a deadline. And that's why I really stressed on the deadline, because as you're getting closer to the deadline, then you can follow up. And it doesn't seem as aggressive as following up on something that there's no deadline and they just feel that they have forever to respond. But the truth is, yes, it's completely true, and it's happened to me as Google or when I own my companies that that you've got a cold lead sometimes, and that's why those closing those indications of when you're ready to close are so important, because you need to see what are those indications that the customer, the partner, or the other party is giving you. How are they reacting to your communications? But yeah, I think to your point, it's really hard, right? Especially in COVID world, to do all this stuff via email.
It
And
is.
that's why the rapport with the other party is so important. And that's what Fisher was all about. He always said, be hard on the problems, not on the people. Like, make sure you have a good relationship with the person, because you'll definitely get to a better outcome, and you'll get a faster outcome as well if the other person's a little bit involved because they like you, or because you've gone out with lunch. They're like, if they feel they owe you a little bit,
Yeah, that's what I was
That's
going
a
to
really
say.
good question.
Because let's just say you do have a great relationship with the current prospects that you're trying to negotiate with on a deal. You have everything that they need and you can provide it. You do come to a median agreement within your banter or your BATNA, and you're just waiting on that final AOK to send through contractual terms. Does it then become a nuisance or bothersome to those people? Although it is a business and associate relationship, outside of that, you're also a great friend, not so much acquaintance, but business associate, client. And you have that good relationship as well. So I'm just thinking, like, do you still leave it? Do you follow it up? Do you take it outside of the business world and have a discussion? Or do you just wait and see?
That's
Because,
a really good question.
you don't want to
That's
burn the
literally,
bridge.
that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. That's genuinely, like, that's the $1 million question, right?
Yeah.
And like, genuinely, this is what I do on a day-to-day basis, and for my job on negotiations is like trying to manage those relationships, and it all depends on the relationship that you've built, but also on your personality and the client's personality. So I
Yeah.
have partners that worked for large multinational corporations where I genuinely, like, if they don't reply to me to an email by day 1 or 2, I'll follow up once, and after that I'll just send a WhatsApp and I'll be like, mate, you really need to send
That's
this to me today, like I'm getting hammered. And they'll be
yes,
like, oh, sorry mate, and they'll reply. And then there's other partners where I need to escalate to their manager or
their
to the
manager and their
CTO of the
manager.
company. Correct.
That's right. So
Um,
that's the kind of relationship and the rapport that I have. So I know my different clientele and what their relationships are. So different stakeholders will hold different managerial roles, and you know what type of clients you have and what banter you can throw with that within that negotiation. So it's more of, it's different when you're working for an organization as opposed to working for your own company. And they do know that you've branched off on your own. So you don't want to be pushing at them because you are working on your own, as it will then sort of come across as conflict of interest per se, if that makes sense. Yeah. So like,
And I think that's why it's good to be, to a degree,
mhm,
you always need to have more information than the other party, but also you have to be very calculating on the information that you provide. And I
absolutely.
think that's where you need to play a little bit with the type of personality that, and again, this was such a short course for negotiation because there's a whole other side of the psychology of the negotiation that comes to play. But touching on that briefly is that if you know the partner or the person that you're speaking with, there may be things that may resonate with them better than others. It's like you could use sort of a pity card and say, look, this is, as you know, this is my company, and like we won't make it till the end of the month if we don't close this deal. Or there could be others like, look, I have 5 different offers. I need to choose by tomorrow what projects I'm going to be working on next month. I'm going to have to cancel your deal if you don't come back to me today. Like you sort of had to choose how aggressive you can go or not, you know. But yeah, that's why what we all get paid for, right? Like it's managing those hundreds and different variables. And again, I think that's why the framework is important to use, because when, like, you can really sort of touch base and in one page just have a full view of what are those items and concessions, because you might just refer back to the framework and see like, oh, this is really important for them and it's really easy for me to give, so I'm going to offer I'm going to offer that to them and say, if you close by today, you can have this for free, for example. Like it's
Mhm.
just about those multiple options and what are those, the storytelling items that we touch base on. Like what are those storytelling items we can leverage? But yeah, again, that's I guess what we get paid for, to navigate all those different variables.
Good. I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that what I'm doing is on the right track, hearing it from an expert point of view, I suppose.
Yeah, like genuinely just click through the if you go back, Angel, to the one, yeah, that one, just use the framework, pull it up. Like it'll take you literally an hour. It's one page only. It takes an hour because you really have to sit and think about certain things. But it might be only like part 1, 2, and 4 of the framework. And yeah, it might work really well for you. But I think at least we'll put things into perspective. But yeah,
No,
great question though.
thank you.
We have 1 more minute. I don't know if there's any last question before we wrap it up.
Any more questions? Lewis,
All
do you have a
right.
question?
7 seconds.
If yeah, so if you're Enrique, if you're coming across different people who, based on rapport, someone you've been friends with, let's say for a few years, as opposed to someone you've just met, is that negotiation in a business context going to be a lot different to than it would be with a friend?
I think this is going back to Talia's question, right? It's all about personalities. And like I said, it's unfortunately it was a short course, so we couldn't touch the psychology of negotiation. But if it's somebody that you've known for a long time, I'd say it's going to be different, not because you've known them for longer, but because you know their personality better than the person that you just met. So you might treat that negotiation different. You might cling more to friendship facts or things like that with the person that you've been friends with for a long time than to actual facts about the business and the actual negotiation on the new one. But yeah, like ultimately every negotiation is going to be different, and personality is going to play a very big part of that. But I think that's the beauty of it, right? Like even though they're all different, at the core, the strategies to manage those negotiations are all very similar, and the information that you have, it's ultimately going to help you come to a better outcome, regardless of the person or the personality that you have in front of you.
Cool.
Maybe we could
Alright.
touch that sometime, like the psychology of negotiation, because it's
Yeah, definitely.
it's different.
Well, I'm not a psychologist, but I can give my take on it again. But
Yeah, because it's
but
different
yeah,
when you talk to when you talk professionally and friends, it's actually very difficult. It could be difficult. It could be a difficult situation as well
Yeah.
if you're dealing with friends, most especially the ones that you're really close with. Yeah, so maybe that's something we could look forward to studying in the future.
completely. I'd love to put something together for that, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for coming, and thank you, Angel, for
Thank you
hosting.
so much for giving time for teaching us today. Very we appreciate you. Yeah, that's it. Thank you guys. Thank you for today, and thank you for your time.
Bye,
Bye.
guys. Thank you.
Bye
Thanks.
guys.
Bye.
See you soon.